Radhe Krishna everyone. I'm here again to talk about two other powders in Cafe Guru's catalog. One is the Puliyogre powder, the other one is Vangbhath powder. For Puliyogre powder, I'll talk a bit of theory. One thing you need to know about tamarind rice or Puliyogre is that tamarind is not the only key ingredient in Puliyogre. The other key ingredient in Puliyogre is the sesame seeds. There are two types of sesame seeds. The Cafe Guru's powder contains both of them. It adds a bit of nuttiness to the entire thing, and it balances all of the strong flavors in the tamarind rice powder. So that is another thing you need to know. I've added both as per the recipe. Now how do you make this? For this, another essential ingredient is the gingerly oil or the sesame oil. You have to make this using the gingerly oil only. Please do not use groundnut oil or sunflower oil, canola or vegetable oil for tamarind rice. Always go get a nice cold pressed gingerly oil and use that. But before I get to the powder, there are a couple of steps that you have to follow when you are making tamarind rice. If you are using a rice cooker or a pressure cooker, please do not use 1:2 ratio of rice and water. For tamarind rice, it has to be 1:1.5 water, and when you should not rinse the rice for 20 to 30 minutes. Some people have this habit of rinsing the rice before they make the rice because they want it to be overboiled and nice and mushy. Please do not do that for tamarind rice. So when you add rice and water and set it in a pressure cooker or rice cooker, what you have to do is you have to add about 1 to 1.5 spoons of teaspoons of gingerly oil into that mix. This makes sure that the rice grains are very separate, and it also kind of insulates rice grains from getting overcooked. In case you overlook the third whistle and it gets into the fourth or the fifth whistle, it kind of insulates that. So please bear in mind. For those of you who are setting a pot of water to boil and then adding rice, it is still the same step. You still need to add 1 to 1.5 spoons of gingerly oil into the rice when it boils, and when you're draining the starch out, you have to make sure that it is not overboiled. So those of you who are making that way will understand what I'm saying. So this is about rice, and after the rice is done, you have to take a nice wide vessel and transfer the rice to that vessel and allow the rice to cool nicely. This is a very essential step. Now, the usage of Cafe Guru's Puliyogre powder. For every half cup of rice, you have to take about 3 to 4 teaspoons of gingerly oil and set it on a low flame. And if you're using a thin bottomed vessel, please watch it, because gingerly oil captures the heat very fast and it starts to smoke. It should not smoke. As soon as you see the smoke formation, you have to turn the stove off and then add about 3 teaspoons of tamarind powder to that and mix it immediately well, because when you add 3 to 4 spoons of gingerly oil, the oil that sticks to the surface of the vessel will be hotter than the oil on the surface. So what happens is, when you add the tamarind rice powder, the powder that goes to the bottom of the vessel will start to get charred. So it's very important that you mix well, and it's very also important that you remove the vessel away from the stove and do all of this. And then either you can transfer all of the rice to this vessel, or you can transfer the contents of this vessel to the rice and give it a nice mix. And when you're mixing, I prefer that you mix it with your bare hands. And for those of you who are not comfortable doing that, use a wooden spoon that does not have sharp edges. I have done this many times. People tend to use sharp ladles and spoons that are either metal or wooden, and then they keep on mixing, and then it kind of breaks all the rice grains, and therefore it then becomes a very mushy tamarind rice. Now, in order to adjust the salt level, I have already added the necessary amount of salt for the powder, but it is on the slightly lower side, because I don't know the salt palette for different people, so it is on the lower side. So you may have to add a pinch or two of salt on top and mix it nicely. Now if you think that this proportion that I have said, about 3 to 4 spoons, is not enough, now you don't have to worry about again sauteing it in gingerly oil and adding. Now that once you have done this, to adjust, you can just add a bit more of powder if it is needed for your taste, and then adjust it accordingly. Some of you who might have a sweeter palate, there is certain amount of jaggery as well in the powder. So if you want a bit more jaggery, you can grate a jaggery and add, and it will mix well. And when you are serving it to guests, always make sure when you are doing tamarind rice that you are not mixing as they come in. Tamarind rice at least needs to set. After you mix it, it kind of needs to set and get adjusted for at least about 30 to 45 minutes. So at least if you're making this, make an hour before you have to serve, so that it kind of sets well and becomes very guests will relish that. Now coming to the Vangbhath powder. This Vangbhath powder again is has star anise in it and has very beautiful fragrance, and the sharpness of the star anise is kind of compensated by the sweetness of the cinnamon. So so that is that. And you can make Vangbhath in using many different vegetables, and I for one make it with many vegetables. I combine chow chow and string beans and make a version of that. I combine I just use a capsicum and make a version of that. I use capsicum and tomato, make a version of that. And I also use dill and dill alone and make a version of that. And lastly, I use fenugreek leaves and make a version of that as well. All of these versions of Vangbhath comes out really well. What you have to do is, for Vangbhath, it needs a bit more oil than the rest of the bhaths out there. So make sure that you are at least taking about 8 to 10 spoons of any oil that you prefer. There is no preference here. Canola oil, vegetable oil, sunflower oil, any oil. To this, you have to give a nice, beautiful seasoning, and a generous seasoning at that. You have to at least give 3 to 4 strands of curry leaves, 2 to 3 spoons of chana dal and urad dal and mustard and jeera, cumin seeds that is, and then add 2 or 3, break 2 or 3 badgi chilies and add. And please note friends, when you are breaking the badgi chilies, please make sure that you are emptying all the seeds, because otherwise the rice will be full of just badgi seeds and it doesn't taste good, because you're always tasting the chili seeds, the red pepper seeds, which is not a good thing to have. And then you can add cashews to decorate it and beautify it and make the occasion that much more special. So it's up to you. And then to this you have to add the chopped vegetables, and on a low to medium flame you have to cook it for about 5 to 6 minutes for the vegetables to get cooked well and to be able to boil as well at the same time. Now if you're deciding to add green beans and chow chow, you can add them together. But if you're adding green beans, chow chow and capsicum, you have to separate capsicum, allow green beans and chow chow to boil, and then add capsicum, because capsicum cooks faster than green beans and chow chow. So that is something that you have to watch for. Now to this you have to add about 3 to 4 spoons again, 3 to 4 teaspoons of heap full of teaspoons, that is, of the Vangbhath powder, and bring the flame to low immediately. Allow it to and then mix it well along with salt and a dash of lemon juice, if you will. Then allow it to mix and allow the aroma to fill your kitchen, and then immediately turn off the stove and remove the vessel from the stove away and set it aside. Then mix the nice boiled rice. For this you can use, if you're using a rice cooker or a pressure cooker, for this you can use 1:2 ratio of water when you're making the rice. And it is always a good idea to add about half a spoon of oil whenever you're making any mixed rice, be it lemon rice, tamarind rice or Vangbhath, so that the grains come out nice and strong and long. So this is very important. And so that is that, friends, and bon appetit, and have good food, have good conversations, and let there be happiness around you. So Radhe Krishna. I'll make another video of 2 other spices that I've put out there.